A very warm welcome to Cranfield University. Thank you for joining us. My name is Toby, and you join us in a very warm studio here at Cranfield University in the UK. Please, on Zoom, let us know where you are. We're very keen to find out whereabouts in the world or in the UK you are. So please keep those notes coming. I'm joined today by Dr. Rosina Watson, who's on the sofa with me here. We also have a bunch of others who's going to join us today, and we're going to talk about the Sustainability Masters Apprenticeship. So if that doesn't ring a bell, then you're on the wrong webinar. But it's good to have you anyway. So thank you again. We're going to be together for about an hour. We'll try and keep it finishing at UK time 1300. We'll try not to go on any longer than that. This is an interactive session, so we do want your questions. So at any time in the remaining hour that we have together, please type your chat. This is International Sign Language for text chat. You know how to do that now. How many Zoom meetings have you all been in? I've been in one or two, I think it's fair to say. If you're willing to turn your cameras on, that'd be nice, but it's not essential. And the usual university principles apply in terms of privacy. So if you want to change your names, you know how to do that. So thank you again for joining us. The session will be recorded. I think you saw that recording button pop up a minute ago. So hopefully you're okay with that. So I'm going to introduce Rosina and Kenisha, first of all, the people that you need to talk to about the course that you're interested in. So first of all, Rosina. Rosina is course co-director and head of the sustainability group in the School of Management, Cranfield School of Management. So that's Rosina. And we're going to come on to Kenisha later on. Kenisha is the course co-director, and you'll see Kenisha shortly, and lecturer, actually in decision science, which is, I think, really interesting. She's also steering Cranfield's environment and agri-food teaching and research. So if you have any questions around that topic, and hopefully some of you do, we're very keen to hear those. Can I open, first of all, Rosina, with a question?
Of
Hopefully
course.
you're okay. You're okay
Hello,
with
everyone. Good afternoon. Just about.
Just about. You can embroider your answer with who you were and why you came into this, because we're interested in that too. But why is Cranfield offering this course right now, and why this course?
Okay, so I came into academia as an ex-CSR corporate social responsibility professional because I wanted to help other people develop their skills and capabilities in this area. So I only joined academia a few years ago, and I'm really passionate about this course. This is what I wanted to do ever since I've joined, really.
Wow.
I mean, preaching to the converted, probably in this audience here, it's obvious that businesses are increasingly facing environmental pressures, climate change, but also pressures around social equality. And we're really seeing a huge increase in demand for that kind of capability. So LinkedIn, for example, has seen a 12% increase in jobs advertising for sustainability professionals.
Wow.
I don't know if you saw PwC recently announced they'll be creating 100,000 roles related to social and environmental challenge and opportunities over the next 5 years. 100,000. That's globally, but it's a big number.
Wow.
So I think we all recognise that we need to build capabilities around sustainability, and I think that applies if you're already a sustainability professional, because it's one of the toughest jobs I've ever done, and I think it is a really tough job. You have to understand, the technical side of what you're doing, but you also have to be able to lead people. You have to be able to drive change. It's not an easy role. So we really want to help equip people to do that as well as they can.
So some of the people on the call could be already sustainability professionals.
I think looking at who's joining today, some of you already are sustainability professionals, but if you've come more from a technical side, maybe you want to learn more about leadership capabilities. If you come more from a general management side, maybe you want to learn more about the in-depth techniques like life cycle assessment, carbon footprinting, etc. But even if you're not a sustainability professional full time and you're just finding that in your job in procurement or your job in marketing or job in HR, more and more of your role is about thinking about social and environmental challenges and how to respond positively to them, this course would also be really, really relevant and suitable for you. Because everyone needs to play a part in driving sustainability strategy in a business, not just the sustainability team. And in terms of why Cranfield, sorry, my earpiece has just fallen out. Technical problems always bound to happen. Cranfield are really well equipped to provide this sort of training. Our university is really about having impact in the real world. And so this course is fantastic because you guys will be driving change in your day jobs whilst also learning about it in this course. And because we do have those good links with industry, we can bring industry professionals in. The teaching can stay relevant, can stay up to date in what is a very fast changing field.
Thank you. Stick around. Please don't go away. We also want to hear from Kenisha Garnett. And Kenisha, I've got a question for you. And if you could introduce Kenisha yourself as well as responding to the question. And it's a fairly simple question that I have for you. This whole session and the whole MSc is titled Sustainability Masters Apprenticeship. Why should apprentices come to study at Cranfield? Kenisha, over to you.
Thanks, Toby. Thanks. Warm good afternoon to everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying this rare but good weather. In terms of my trajectory in the field of sustainability, I started off my life as an engineer. I've worked in the sector and industry quite a few years before becoming an academic. Now, my research is primarily around the kind of long-term resilience and sustainability of organizational systems, policies, how prepared are organizations to deal with some of the long-term challenges, the external environment, market in which businesses operate is constantly changing. We see that with the pandemic. So I implement work with companies, primarily government organizations, to design tools and techniques to think about the future and orient their strategies and policies to better prepare for an uncertain world. And that is going to be delivered as a core module in our sustainability course. Now, you asked about why people should, or why organizations might choose Cranfield to study sustainability. If you're not already familiar with Cranfield, Rosina's already mentioned our kind of industry-facing DNA. Cranfield has quite a unique focus on science, engineering, technology, and management. Those are our core areas of our core disciplines. Two of our core disciplines in which we champion sustainability is in environment and agri-food, where I sit, and leadership and management, where Rosina sits. And quite often these two disciplines work, and I'm not ashamed to say it, work in silos. So this course is a really exciting opportunity to bridge that gap. So we're really excited to be launching a course that brings expertise from these disciplines and provide a real broad kind of focus around sustainability. So we're looking to merge kind of management and technical skills and competencies that we strongly feel are needed to not only to drive sustainability up the business agenda, but to do the kind of operational elements, measure, monitor performance, make appropriate adjustments to kind of operations and procurement strategies as a result of that analysis. So this is quite a unique undertaking for Cranfield, but very much aligned to our kind of skills and capabilities.
Kenisha, thank you very much indeed. It's also worth saying that we are also joined online by Neil Godfrey, who's going to be talking a little bit more about things to do next if you're an employer involved in putting people through this program. We're also joined by Kerry Geary, who is the Apprenticeship Quality Manager. I'm going to come to Kerry later on in the session, in the program. And also on the text chat, just a reminder, please type your text chat questions at any time during the next hour. We have Gabriella Pearson and Rosina Borelli, another Rosina, who can answer some of the questions that you may have in the text chat. Otherwise, if they can't answer it, we'll do our level best to speak out the answer to those. So I'm keen to find out more about the program. Do you want to tell us more about the program and
yes, please.
What's in it?
So as you might have seen looking on the website or wherever you were researching this course is primarily going to be delivered online. So a lot of the taught modules, almost all of the taught modules will be delivered online. So if you join the course, you'll be seeing more of this, seeing more of Toby. We try and make those sessions as if you're in the room with us, but obviously it's saving carbon footprint associated with having to travel backwards and forwards to Cranfield. But you would be coming to Cranfield annually for 3 days. Physically, really coming with your legs and their feet attached. We're calling them spring schools because they take place in March, but that will be 3 days on campus doing stuff that only really works at face-to-face. I'll talk to you a bit more about that later, but I just wanted to talk first about some of the modules that you'd be doing, the taught modules that we'd be doing. So if we could put up the slide that has the list of the taught modules, that'd be great.
There you go.
Is it up?
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. So 14 modules. We're not going to talk about all of them, you'll be pleased to hear. So we're just going to highlight a few of them. So if I could start with the personal leadership for sustainability module that's led by Richard Kay. I can never say his surname, so I won't try now. So we start by looking at you as a person. You know, what abilities and capabilities do you already have as a leader, and which do you want to develop more, so that you can use your personal influence more effectively to push for sustainability in your organization. So the focus starts very much on you. This is a module that will be delivered face-to-face over the first year and the second year, because it is obviously a very personal module. It's very much about self-reflection. You will start keeping a journal, keeping an e-portfolio about your experiences as a leader and how they evolve and change over time. So you'll be really sort of trying to think about what is my journey as a leader for sustainability? Where do I want to take that over the period of this course? The next one I want to talk about is leading sustainable business, because that's the module I lead. So this is a very practical module that really focuses in on what steps does an organization need to set a purpose that's beyond profit, develop a sustainability strategy and work out how to implement that and monitor against it, how to innovate for sustainability, and how to do that in collaboration with others. So this is taking more of an organizational focus, and it's a kind of overview of the steps that an organization needs to take. Very much drawing on the fact, my experience that I've had doing this as a sustainability professional myself, but bringing in also other industry leaders to hear their stories, their challenges, and how they've overcome them. So I'll hand over to Kenisha to talk about module 4.
Okay, thanks, Rosina. So module 4 is evaluating environmental sustainability. So this is led by Adrian Williams, who is an expert in life cycle assessment. So this particular module equips learners with a range of skills that they need to conduct a life cycle assessment. This is a very key tool to implementing sustainability. LCA, which is often the abbreviation we're most commonly associated with for this particular area, takes a very much a whole systems approach to quantify both direct and indirect impacts on the environment and on society as well. So it's important to kind of flag this particular focus. It's both environmental and social impacts. From the production and manufacturing of goods or from the delivery of services. So it's very broad and very multifaceted in terms of its focus. Learners are really guided in terms of implementing, and these terminologies may be more common to you, carbon and water footprint approaches, but equally, and this is via my contribution, identifying and defining measures of social impact. So this is an interesting kind of slant to a typical LCA module, where the focus is split between both environmental and social impacts. I'll pass over back to you, Rosina, to talk about the next module.
So yes, if we could go to the next slide, brilliant, thank you. So the next module I want to talk about at the top of the slide there is economics for sustainability, which is led by Andy Angus, who's an economist. So this module is really crucial in my mind. This is all about how do you build the case? How do you build the business case for sustainability in your business? And it's something that I struggled with when I was doing the role. So this is about how do you appraise investments, looking at the costs and benefits of an initiative or a project over its economic lifetime. Obviously, this is harder when some of the benefits are long-term. They are less easy to quantify because they might be social impacts, as Kenisha just mentioned, or they might be broader societal benefits that we know we want, but find it hard to evaluate what benefit that's going to bring to the business in the long term. So a really interesting module here. There'll also be a bit of a critical look at the ways that we currently measure investments. Is it right to discount the future when we know as sustainability people that the future is just as important as the present? And what are the new economic paradigms that might have to come into play to drive sustainability better in the future? So we look at working with what we've got, how you build a business case within the current way that that's done within businesses, but also how might this need to be different in the future. I used to be an accountant, so I love my numbers. Sorry.
We'll forgive you.
And then the next one in here oh no, it's Kenisha next. Sorry, Kenisha.
No, that's all right. Thanks, Rosina. We are playing tag at this, aren't we? So the next module I briefly want to cover is risk communication and perception. We think this is a really interesting one. It's led by our residential risk expert, Dr. Simon Jude. So this module is really about making you a little bit more aware of different perceptions around risk. So the more social or perceived perception of risk, as well as the more measured and evidence-based perceptions around risk. So the module is really developing a more holistic approach that exposes learners to the attitudes to risk, using concepts both within social and cultural theories, or social and cultural theories that are common to disciplines such as sociology, psychology, to identify drivers that influence the debate around perceptions of risk. We've got a lot of emerging perceptions around climate risk, and these can often kind of be a damper on some of the strategies and approaches that you're pushing forward. So in this module, we really want to push learners or students to gain an appreciation of how to communicate risk to different audiences. And we do this by putting them in specific roles, the role of the environmental regulator, the lobby group, or other key stakeholders. And we task you to develop a bit of a communication plan around a public-facing, business-critical issue, and implement that plan by producing a podcast, say how you would communicate risks inherent in this particular issue. So it really tasks you to demonstrate skills for communicating future risks to individuals as well as organizations. So I think a real applied module and is an opportunity for you to consider a current issue within the business that you'd like to focus on. So I'll pass over back to you, Rosina. I think we're moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, so just a brief comment on Denise Julian's module, which is about sustainable and circular supply chains. So obviously, as sustainability gets more sophisticated, we're all very much looking at our supply chains and the impacts that we have in our supply chains, scope 3 carbon emissions, for those of you who know that term. So this is all about looking at how your practices in supply chain and logistics can influence your sustainability strategy. And also the challenges presented by trying to make a transition from linear supply chain models to more circular models in different sectors. And in terms of looking at that transition to circularity, as part of this module, you'll play a game. So it's an online simulation game where you'll play the role of either a VP of finance, a VP of purchasing, VP of sales, trying to work together to develop a more circular model for an e-bike company. So again, learning about what it means to be a circular supply chain, and then trying to put that in practice through this simulation to find out, what are the barriers and how you can overcome them, and learn from that in terms of what that transition might look like in your own sector and your own business. So that's all we were going to say, Toby, on specific modules.
Wow.
Thank
you. And apologies, some people have had issues trying to get in, so apologies for that, but it's great that most of you are here now. Just a reminder, if you have any questions about anything that Kenisha or Rosina have said about any aspect of the program, please type them into the text chat box, and we will do our level best to answer those, either with people that are already from Cranfield in the text chat area, or we will do our level best to do that. I guess my question is, this is all very well in terms of substantive content of the program, but what has it got to do with apprentices? Where's the connection?
We're going to talk a bit more about, we're just going to talk about the spring schools a bit first.
All right, spring schools. Okay, let's do that then.
I just thought it'd be quite nice to give people an idea of a flavour of what they'll do when they actually come to Cranfield.
Understood. I've never heard of the phrase spring school. I've heard of a summer school, but I've never heard of a spring school. So tell us more about that. We do have some questions coming in now, but I'll leave that until you said some more.
Okay, so if we could bring the slides back up again, that we had where there's a slide on each of the spring schools, if that's okay. If you take it forward, another 2. One more. Just so you know, there is a question from Paul about assessed group work and qualifications. Okay, well, maybe let's touch on this slide then.
Okay,
the course
all right,
assessment slide,
all
which Kenisha's going to
So
walk us through.
Paul, listen up. This is for you. So Kenisha, talk us through this.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Toby. Now this is perhaps a very crucial part of the course, and hence I'm not surprised we've got a question on this. So we have the course of itself is in two principal components. The taught component comprised of 14 10-credit modules. So these are the modules that are delivered in the first 2 years of the course. As Rosina's already explained, this is a part-time course over 2.5 for 3 years if you count in the period of the assessment, endpoint assessment. So for the first 2 years, we've got 14 taught modules, 10-credit modules delivered over six-week periods. Now, the taught modules are what we refer to as continuously assessed. So there are no end of module examinations. We don't often think that's the best way to test knowledge. And recognizing the professional cohort, this is an intense piece of work that you can really explore some of the concepts of that are learned in the context of your day-to-day job. So how are we applying an LCA assessment within the confines of some of the challenges you have at work? So it's a mixture. Our assessments are a mixture of kind of consultancy projects as well as group-based assessments and presentations, group presentations, where there is a healthy exchange between the cohort in terms of sharing experiences and learning from each other, which we often refer to as peer learning. So that's the first 24 months. We then move on to the endpoint assessment. So what we're asking is that obviously students and our learners pass all 14 modules. We then task you to outline your group, your individual assessment, which is the endpoint assessment, or what we generally refer to as the work-based project. Now, the work-based project requires submission of an 18,000-word report, and that's based around a business-specific challenge. Now, there's an opportunity here to really work with 2 dedicated academics that have the subject expertise to support a potential challenge that you're having within the business. Now, this could be looking at an operational challenge. It could be a challenge around procurement and how you're trying to develop more of a green strategy for procuring certain products. Or it could be much more on the business and management side. How are you kind of assessing the materiality impact of the business, and how do you communicate that effectively to your investors and other stakeholders? So this is an opportunity to, as I said, get guided support on producing an intense piece of work. That is accompanied by a technical interview. It's a 1-hour technical interview that where an endpoint, an independent assessor questions you about the practicality of your work, the achievements in terms of how you're able to implement this in the context of work. And then there's the portfolio of evidence that you produce throughout the 14 modules, or first 2 years of the program, in which you evidence how some of the learning that you've applied has helped to change practice of work. So that's a snapshot of the assessment. There's a lot more details that we can potentially offer, or we can ask if you wanted to explore those by questions, or we can to some material online.
Kanisha, there is a question.
Yes,
I'm not sure if you're going to come onto this, but this is from Paul Williams, and it's the second of Paul's questions. The final level of qualification gained from this course is a little strange. It seems to be dependent upon what someone goes into it with. Please, can you clarify that, either Kenisha or Rosina?
I can clarify if you want to.
Yeah.
So some elements, most elements are certain, Paul. There's only one that's depends on what you go into it with. So you get, if you're on the apprenticeship route, you get an MSc Sustainability, so you get a master's, and you also qualify as a Sustainability Business Specialist through the apprenticeship. And you're also going to get accredited by IEMA. And the only thing that might vary is the level of that accreditation that you get from IEMA. So if you complete the course, so this is the Institute of Environment and I can't remember, I can never remember the rest of it. Environmental monitoring, and it's basically the biggest membership organization around environmental and social practitioners. So they will accredit you. If you finish the course, you get an accreditation from them. So you become a sort of certified practitioner with IEMA. The level of accreditation you get varies on your experience coming in. So everyone will get practitioner level accreditation. If you've been a practicing sustainability professional for a bit longer before you start the course, there's a potential for you to get a higher level of accreditation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Paul, stick around. One more question from Paul, and that is, how many hours of study a week? Crucial question. Thank you, Paul. Roughly an hours of study a week?
No, you'll be studying to complete an apprenticeship. It's 20% of your time spent studying. So every Friday.
Wow.
Every Friday. So the rhythm of this is that we'll be teaching you every other Friday, and then the Fridays in between, it's self-directed study. I think we've got a slide on that a bit later.
Some of these questions are going to come out in the text chat, answered by Rosina and Gabriella. Also, they're going to come on to some of these. But Paul, thank you for your question. Can I get one quick question in from Leah from Vitacrest? What career stage is this aimed at? What sort of existing knowledge is expected of someone coming on this course?
Very, very good question. But we're trying to be as broad as possible. So it can be that you're coming into your first sustainability role, or that you've been practicing for a few years. And we really want to be able to accommodate that range of people, because I think part of this is learning from each other, learning from people in a different sector, learning from people who have a different functional role. So they might be working in a procurement team or an R&D team, but also learning from people who have got different types and levels of experience. So even if you're less experienced, your life experience is going to be different. You know, you might have done something outside work and volunteering, for example, that really has great bearing on what we're learning about. So it will be an expectation of everybody who's taking part to participate in that peer learning.
Can I get one more question in?
Sure.
Yeah, this is from Riles. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Is the course suitable for social value professionals who don't have as much experience in environmental sustainability?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I think that fits with this question of diversity. We want that diversity in the cohort, because if you're a social value professional, you'll be able to teach lots of the people who've traditionally focused on environmental value and vice versa. So absolutely, as long as you're open to the fact that this will give you a much more well-rounded training in sustainability in its broadest triple bottom line, triple pillar: social, environmental, economic.
Kenisha, one quick question for you, and then we can carry on the presentation. This is from Wendy. Will I be able to apply all of the module work to real work situations so that no work is wasted or is not relevant? Kenisha, how relevant and pragmatic is this course?
Now, that's a key question. What a core principle of this course is reflective practice, and that has to be demonstrated through our modules. So you have to demonstrate how you're applying the learning from each module to a business challenge or to your work environment. And that is evident through the portfolio. So that's definitely something that we will be supporting through the development of the modules, or through the delivery of the modules, I should say. Wendy, is it Wendy? Is it Wendy?
Yeah,
Tony?
Wendy, yes.
I'll ask the question. Yeah. So yes, the short answer to that, Wendy, is yes. You have to demonstrate how you're applying the learning from each module. So these are the 14 modules to change practice at work. And we often support, not we often, we will support that through the delivery of the modules. And equally with the endpoint assessment, this is addressing a business challenge or a business critical need for the organization. So that is even more a direct application of knowledge to a critical challenge that you have at work. So we see this as an opportunity to support the business through the kind of academic knowledge and skills that we have here at Cranfield. And it's a mutual exchange as well, because we're regaining a lot in terms of adapting some of the learning and teaching material so that it better addresses these kind of challenges that are sector specific.
It's probably worth saying, Kenisha, though, that there are some group assessments. We need to be sort of upfront about this. So there might be a situation where you're working in a group and you have to pick one of your businesses to focus on. But you know, again, you learn from that, because you can take learnings from other sectors. So you might be working in the fashion industry, but you can learn from something that's been done in the food industry, for example. So well, Kenisha's right. I think absolutely everything could be, you need to demonstrate how it's helped you in your practice in your own organisation, but some of the assessments will be organised on a group basis.
Brilliant. Wendy, what a fantastic question. And Wendy, come back if you want to on any of those. Can I move on? Leah from Vitacrest is also responding to the question that you answered there. How suited is this course to individuals who are already in a sustainability role and have full IEMA membership? So is it relevant to Leah, who's thinking, well, I already have those things, why should I come on this course?
Yes, I think it's all about.
You would say yes.
I would say that. I'm not gonna say no. No. I think it is still relevant, because obviously that the accreditation is part of the package. You're still also getting a master's, and you're also getting the apprenticeship, and it's all, you can never know enough in terms of being a sustainability professional. There's always going to be areas that you have less experience in, you have less technical capability in, or you might feel that it's more the management practice side of things. So it is all about making sure that you're developing against all those criteria.
Another quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is from Charlotte, and I think it's something that you mentioned earlier on. You said that you admitted that you were in the financial industry, you're an accountant.
I used to be.
Yeah. Charlotte's asking, I work in financial services, will the course be relevant for me? You're going to say yes.
I want as many finance people on the course as possible, because I think finance people have got the real agency to unlock change within organizations. And when I teach EMBA students who just have a module on sustainability, those that come from a finance background can very quickly make big changes in their organizations in terms of the way investments are appraised, for example. So yes, we'd love to have you there.
Charlotte, get yourself down here. We want you. We want you. And also, Rosina, thank you for answering some of those questions in the chat. I'm going to come back to some questions in a minute. What are we looking at next?
I think we're looking at spring schools now. I got my order wrong earlier.
Okay. Is that a separate set of slides?
No, same slides.
Okay, so we can bring those slides back up again. So next slide, is it?
Yep.
Next slide, please.
It's very hot. The machinery's
Any second now. So just talk about it. Just pretend the slide is there.
The first time you come to Cranfield will be right at the beginning of course. This is the pictures that are up now. So this is your number one spring school, 3 days, staying in Cranfield. This is really about meeting your peers, meeting the faculty, meeting your apprenticeship tutor who will support and guide you through the course of the apprenticeship. We'll be using professional coach, Rachel Mallows, to help you think about, to do a needs assessment, to look at all the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are being required in the apprenticeship and say, where am I against all of these? What do I need to do to address any gaps or areas of weakness, or build on areas where I've already got strengths? And obviously, this is a really important opportunity to meet people in person with their legs attached so that you can build those relationships that will then carry you through the next year with your peers and also, as I say, with faculty. And then moving on to Spring School 2, which is then a year later. You can take it forward to the next slide if that's okay. The next Spring School, if we just missed that, that's one of the activities that we'll be doing in the first Spring School, playing a game. Spring School 2 is all thinking about innovation and opportunities, solutions that are most pressing for you in your business. So we're going to get you to group around particular issues. We're calling them challenge sprints. Do you really want to focus on increasing diversity and inclusion in your organization? Do you really want to focus on plastic packaging? And get the opportunity to work together in groups around those key issues for you, which will then help you think about the topic of what you're going to study in your endpoint assessment. There'll be an innovation tour of Cranfield. These photos are here just showing you the Cranfield campus. It is like the world in miniature. We've got an airfield, we've got a autonomous vehicle testing track, we've got a solar farm. Maybe if you go on to the next slide, actually, we've got lots of nice pictures of those things.
Got a sewage treatment works.
Sewage treatment works. We've got, we're producing hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen. We've got biodiversity experiments. We've also got our crop greenhouses, which you can see in the top in the middle there, where we're experimenting with things like drought resistant crops. So, and the sewage works on the bottom right there, as Toby pointed out. So a chance to see those technologies in action around the campus. And then if we move to the next slide, Spring School 3, which is at the end of your 2 years of taught, but before you go on to your endpoint assessment. One of your modular assessments is to create a poster. So we'll have the poster exhibition. You can all look at each other's work around the sustainable and circular supply chain module. There'll be elective masterclasses here. So if you want to focus more in on HR practices to support diversity and inclusion, or how you form partnerships and collaborations with NGOs, there'll be masterclasses on those topics. But very much here a focus on getting ready for your endpoint assessment. So coming to that final spring school with a draft of what you think you're going to do for your project and getting feedback, peer feedback, faculty feedback to help you develop that further. And it's probably worth saying that the new cohorts that come in every year will all gather together at these spring schools. So by the time you're at spring school 3, you'll be the experts, you'll be the third years, you'll be able to meet all the first years, and help support and mentor the people coming in to join the course as well, which is also developing your skills in that area.
Can I put a quick question in from Vanessa?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Friday.
Fridays.
Vanessa's incredulous. Do I understand correctly that all class time and homework is expected to be manageable within the 8-hour Friday? Really?
Yes.
There you go, Vanessa. It's a yes.
Yes.
I think Vanessa's skeptical. Can I get one more question in from Paul? Paul's got a follow-on one. And you mentioned modular assessments there. Can you give a quick idea, a guide in terms of word count for those consultancy projects and group projects? We're looking at 10,000 word thing,
they vary, but I don't know, average 2,000 short. But if it's a group project, it might be longer because you're all contributing to it. If it's a presentation, obviously it's not word based. It might be it's a poster or it's a podcast, so they do vary. But if it's a written piece of work, they tend to be shorter. Like maybe a group written reflective report might be up to 3,000, but no longer than that.
And where can Paul get and everyone else get the detailed assessment criteria? Is that on the website somewhere? Or
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Maybe,
There's a.
Shall I come? Sorry,
Go
Toby. Just to interject. I think possibly in relation to the previous question that we had around the time that's dedicated for assessments. It's important probably to note that assessments are not necessarily done just at the end of the module. There's a build-up. So there will be kind of online self-directed learning that happens outside of the contact hours with your class tutor, virtual class tutor. And these self-directed activities, which we set and is supported through technology enhanced learning, for example, they help and support you thinking about the assessment from the start of the module all the way through to the period that you have to work on your assessment. So there is a long lead time to producing these assessments. And it's not just chucked at you at the end of the module. So don't worry.
Yeah, thank you, Kenisha. There were a few questions about exactly that, so thank you to answering some of those. Leah's got a follow-on question from Vitacross. The course looks excellent. My one concern is evidencing changes made through the modules. What happens if your business is not open to change? I think you can talk about this one. Whether for financial reasons or a difficult culture, will this lack of change reduce the score? I'm quite sure about the last bit, Leah, but what happens if your organization isn't open to change?
Well, you are reflecting on the experience that you're having within your organization and the strategies and approaches that you're trying to use to implement change. And when you're bumping up against those challenges, that's the things that you need to reflect on. And that's where you would need to, where you could then access your peers, people who've come across the same problems, the industry professionals, faculty, and we're there to help you to sort of try and get over some of those barriers.
Thank you. There's a ton of questions here which have more of an apprenticeship angle on things. I'm not sure if we're going to come around to that, but where are you at in your slides?
We've got one more, and then we're handing over to Kerry.
Okay, great. Let's do that one more slide if we can.
So we've got one more slide that talks a bit more about the support that you'll get as an apprentice. So the key thing to think about is this sort of triangular relationship between an apprentice, the student, your employer sponsor, so your line manager, whoever's sponsoring you on the course in your organization is a really key relationship, and also your apprenticeship tutor. So we have a team of apprenticeship tutors who are really well versed in guiding you through the apprenticeship process. So you'll be assigned one of those apprenticeship tutors, and that three-way relationship runs through the course of the apprenticeship, as well as you can see within that circle, having support from your peers, these external experts, as I was talking about, the virtual learning environment where you can access resources and self-directed learning, and our expert faculty. And I think Kenisha is going to talk a bit more about the formal monitoring points in that relationship.
Yes, thanks, Rosina. Yes, I mean, this I think goes back to one of the questions that we had earlier. So we do monitor the progress throughout the taught modules in terms of how individual apprentices are progressing with the portfolio of evidence that you have to produce, in terms of how that learning is being applied to the work environment. And that support comes directly from your regular meetings with the apprenticeship tutor. So they'll review your portfolio, address any particular challenges that you're having in terms of evidencing how you're changing practice at work, what kind of evidence will support demonstrating that, best steps demonstrating that. So the apprenticeship tutor meeting is really an opportunity to discuss these types of challenges. Now, those meetings can occur roughly every 12 weeks, but there's an opportunity to request a one-to-one meeting with your apprenticeship tutor or myself and Rosina, so as the need arises. There is also a kind of an initial assessment, maybe I should have started here, that happens at the first spring school. And this is just to assess where you are in terms of competencies, for the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are set out in the standard. And this is almost the benchmark for us, or the baseline, so that we can assess what level of progress we need to monitor throughout the apprenticeship. So that's done, that assessment is done by an independent coach and mentor, somebody who's qualified as a coach and mentor. Rosina talked about her, Rachel Mallow. And then the other third kind of key timeline or point of contact is this tripartite meeting that happens between the apprentice, the employer, as well as the apprenticeship tutor. And this is an opportunity to bring your employer into the conversation. So into the conversation that regularly occurs between yourself, the apprentice, and the apprenticeship tutor. And this is an opportunity for the employer to monitor progress and to ask specific questions in terms of the change that's happening at work, and how that can be a bit be better supported by us, or how we can feed into monitoring that, etc. Or there may just be specific questions about how you can address certain challenges in a different way, per se. So 3 key stages in which we have regular meetings to monitor progress.
Kenisha, thank you very much indeed. I'm really keen to hear from Kerry, because the questions here are around how can I possibly fit this into one day. Kerry, can we come around to you and explain a little bit more about the apprenticeship side of things? Why have I got to be an apprentice to come onto this program? How do I become one? And a little bit more about how Cranfield manages that whole apprenticeship thing. Kerry, over to you.
Yeah, so if I talk a little bit about Cranfield as an apprenticeship provider first, and then I can look at those questions, we can talk through those. So if I can have the slides about Cranfield University apprenticeships, please, and I'll go through those.
You've got to sing a song before we get the slides up, I'm afraid.
Oh, what song would you like?
No comment. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So we're a very successful apprenticeship training provider. We've had over 1,200 apprentices on our level 7 postgraduate apprenticeship programs on a range of courses. And we have had over 400 of our apprentices have gone through that endpoint assessment process that we heard about earlier. And we currently have a 100% pass rate. We've 1% of our students sort of face a resit, but once that's happened, then that they have also passed. So we're sitting on sort of great success rates here, and every cohort that goes through, we're learning more about how to support apprentices and their employers, and we really know what it means to embed the apprenticeship into your work life. As it says here, if your organisation is eligible and it's in England, then you will be able to use your apprenticeship levy towards this apprenticeship. And the whole levy connection, how we get, how you draw down those funds, we will help you with that. We will be walking through everything that you need to do to make sure that you have an apprenticeship service account, and that you know how to use that and to connect with us. So if I go to the next slide, please. So eligibility is a really big issue with apprenticeships, because those of you who already work with government organisations know that they need to make sure that we have several hoops for everybody to jump through, because they don't want to just give the money over. So we have some eligibility requirements for individuals and also employers. One of the most important, and it comes back to one of the questions that was asked earlier, is that apprenticeship is really for somebody who has an identified training need. It's not for accrediting prior learning. So if you already know everything about this area and you just want to get the MSc, if you like, an apprenticeship can't be used for that purpose. We have to be able to demonstrate that there is significant amounts of new knowledge, skills and behaviours required to help you progress in your current work role or a future work role. Although there is an initial assessment that sort of takes place in one of the spring schools, you will also have to go through initial assessment before to prove your eligibility for your programme. And we ask you to do that with your employer, to sit down and actually look at the knowledge, skills and behaviours, and to rank yourself about how you and your line manager feel that you currently are at this moment, because we need to demonstrate that there's a training need for you to come onto the apprenticeship. So essentially, apprenticeships are designed for people with residency or a right to abode in the UK. So we will need to make sure that you have that residency. It's not for a student visa, it's for a work visa you would need if you're not a British citizen. But again, we can talk through all of those processes with you. One of the most important things is that you must spend a minimum of 50% of your working time in England. And I state that England as opposed to Britain. So unfortunately, if you are based in Wales, Scotland or in Northern Ireland, this apprenticeship won't allow you to study with us. They have different arrangements in all the devolved nations, but we are only able to offer this to people working 50% of their time in England. And with the concerns over working from home, for example, so if you normally work in England, but actually you know that you'll be working from home and you're based in Wales, the Education and Skills Funding Agency, the people that release the money, have said that they're not prepared to consider that. However, if you are actually based in England, then that should be okay. We ask you that you confirm that you are able to commit to the whole of the apprenticeship. So that's not just till the taught programme, but also that 3-month gateway period that you mentioned and the endpoint assessment. And you must have the full support of an employer. And that's a two-way thing really, because as we've discussed, everything you're learning is going to really benefit your business. And it's important that we bring employers in so that it's a win-win situation for both. If I go to the next slide.
Kerry, can I just ask you,
Yes.
Wendy is very worried here. You talking, is there an age restriction on the apprenticeship? No. Is Wendy too old? Wendy, apologies,
No.
but you wrote it down in the text chat.
No.
No, yay, is the right answer.
As long as you're employed, and you have, you're still working, because the apprenticeship is essentially it's a job with training. Wow. So that's the definition.
Wendy, so how old are you? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. It's a joke question. Kerry, thank you. Please carry on.
Yes, I could go back to the slides. Thank you. So as I said, the employer support is absolutely crucial. Because you have to be able to apply all of the knowledge, skills and behaviours into the workplace. And this is a little bit about, so I know some of this has already been covered, but I'll talk about the 20% off the job requirements, because I know that was one of the questions. So the apprenticeship funding rules state that an employer must give at least 20% of their contracted working hours to devote to the apprenticeship. Now, it doesn't have to be a particular day. So although if you attend every other Friday, that will be some of your time, you don't have to then do everything on the following Friday. You can do it so it can be spaced out however you need it to be done. So as long as at the end of the apprenticeship, you have documented and evidenced at least 20% of your contracted working hours during the apprenticeship, it doesn't matter really when you take those, when you spend those hours, if you like, but you must be able to document them. They must be either in work hours, or you must be given time off in lieu for that time. So it's because it is a job with training, it has to be done within your work hours, or you must be compensated for doing it in your own time. But it's a minimum of 20%. And it's down to you and your employer really to negotiate that, as long as the minimum 20% is met. So for example, if you saved up all your alternate Fridays and saved it for when you were doing an assessment, you could use those hours then, as long as you were documenting it. So there's no requirement for it to be a regular amount of time. I think that's all I need to say. So if you go on to the next slide on that one. We go to the next slide.
Bear with, I'm just also keen to get
Can I just say
Oh,
one
go on.
quick thing while we're waiting for the slide? Obviously, what Kerry was saying is focused on the topic of this webinar today, which is the apprenticeship. This MSc is also offered as an open route. Obviously, that means you don't get the funding associated with being an apprentice, but just to say, for those of you here who are considering a self-funded route, that is obviously something that's available to you.
Good point. I'm really keen to get Neil Godfrey. You can talk a little bit more in terms of an employer point of view. Kerry, did we cut you off short there? Sorry if we did.
Yes, just wanted to add that it's the apprenticeship eligibility and the employer eligibility. It's, I mean, very complicated in terms of all the rules and regulations that we get given from the Education and Skills Funding Agency. We try to help you through as much as we can, and we will support to make sure that this is the right course for you. And if not, you know, you're as Rosina said, you're quite welcome to apply for the non-funded route. If there are any questions about eligibility, anything you want to know about the Apprenticeship Levy, anything in those sort of side, please do contact us. The email address is on there, apprenticeships@cranfield.ac.uk, and more than happy to go through any queries in details if we can't do those today.
Kerry, thank you very much indeed. That's really the rubber hits the road there in terms of apprenticeship. So thank you for your time, and please follow up with Kerry if you have any questions. Keen to go to Neil Godfrey. Neil Godfrey, who's the project lead for corporate relations. So those of you employers wanting to know more about this one, I'm keen for you to listen to Neil to talk about that. Neil, let us know what you're thinking. Do you have some slides, or is it just a conversation?
No slides, just a few dates really, Toby, for everyone to bear in mind. So the first date to think about is the 30th of November, because at that point we need an expression of interest form, which is on the website. We'll send you a link, completed by the employer. So if you're an employer and you have individuals in your team that want to apply for the program, you'll need to put them onto, well, you won't need to actually state their names, but you will need to make an expression of interest by the 30th of November. Equally, if you're an individual and you're looking to apply, obviously you're going to need your employer's support, but you will need to enlist the support of your HR team, learning and development team, to complete that expression of interest. So the 30th of November is the expression of interest deadline, and that is an organizational deadline. It's very important that that is a form. It's quite a brief form, but it is to be completed by the organization. And the next deadline is the 3rd of January, and this is for the individual applications. So we'll have some work to do once we've received the expression of interest from the organization, and we'll then send out links for individuals to apply for the MSc. And the deadline for those to be completed will be the 3rd of January. And then the program begins on the 2nd of March. So that's the kind of indicative timeline that we're working to. So the first date is that 30th of November. We will reiterate that in an email to you when we send you a recording of the webinar as well. And in addition to Kerry, you had Kerry's email address there. We'll put my email address in that email. Your organization is free to contact me, and I'm happy to talk. If you're an individual, for example, and you'd like me to talk to your employer about the program, about the process, I'm happy to do that. Equally to yourselves. And my email address, just so you have it, is n.godfrey, Godfrey, @cranfield.ac.uk, and be happy to take any queries. So that's really the process for this apprenticeship, Toby, that people really need to be thinking about. So it's the same process whether you're an individual or an organization on the webinar today, and there is involvement from both sides. But if you do need any guidance, please do get in touch.
Neil, thank you very much indeed. Please stick around. There's a ton more questions. So Chris, if we can go to the four-way shot, and I'll see who we can pose the questions to. Some of the questions have been answered in the text chat. So Rosina Borelli, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to pick generally now, so please stick your hand up if you want to answer this question. This is from Andrew McCarthy. Andrew saying, hi, the website mentions that the concessionary rates are available for individuals from non-profit organizations. Can you advise what these rates are? Who wants to pick up on that?
I can.
Please.
You need to get in touch with us.
Get in touch.
Sorry, just get in touch, and we can take that conversation forward.
Brilliant. I think this might have been answered already, but this is from UK Anders. Will it be 2 intake course, i.e. will there be an intake later in 2022 as well as in March?
It depends how many of you,
depends
how many of you want to come. So we're planning 1 intake in March and then the next intake the following March. But obviously if we've got enough numbers, we would consider a second intake, but there's no plans for that at the moment.
Thank you. This is from Ella. What happens at the assessment during the first spring school? Is it pass fail or is it percentage? And it can, Kenisha, you can answer that as well as Rosina.
So the assessment in the first spring school, that's continued across. So the module of itself is delivered over the first 2 spring schools in the year. So you'd have an assessment that's continuous over a long period of time, and it will be assessed typically as our modules are. So these are 10 credit modules. We said the assessments are generally an in-depth piece of coursework, so an assignment that you submit, or a group presentation, or a group poster, or group work per se. So it'll be those typical forms of assessment, but the only difference is that module that's delivered or integral to the spring school is delivered over 2 years.
Kenisha, thank you. Quickly back to some more questions before we run out of time. This one is from Charlotte. Do you need to have a STEM degree to apply for the apprenticeship? Who wants to answer that?
I can answer that as well.
Go ahead.
So this course, is, I think Rosina and I have pointed out earlier, is capturing a broad range of skill sets and competencies in sustainability. So management, leadership, as well as the more kind of technical skill set that are common to doing environmental assessments or making environmental assessments. So having a STEM degree will prepare you well for the more technical components even within the course. But likewise, if you have softer social science skills, for example, you'll probably be better placed to deal with the business and management module on the course. I think there is great opportunity for peer learning and peer exchange in this school, in this particular course. A lot of our cohorts and other courses at Cranfield take a very blended mix of expertise and skill sets. So this is something that's very common to Cranfield. We're very used to teaching mixed cohorts, and we have good systems in place to really ensure there is a rich learning experience as a result of that kind of peer learning experience.
So don't forget, Kenisha's an engineer.
You're an accountant.
I'm an excellent accountant, so that's why we're working on this course together, to make sure it's a course that has something to offer, regardless of where your journey began towards wanting to bring sustainability more into your role.
Brilliant. One last question.
Just before you say that, I'll take that even further. I'm an engineer who made a transition to social sciences. So.
No, I'm not even going to say what I am. Helen Barton has the last question. I'm afraid we have run out of time, but the last question from Helen is, apologies, I may have missed this, but how much does the course cost? per person, and how much levy is available to offset against it, assuming eligibility of the employer and the individual? Who wants to answer that one? How much?
I can. So
Okay, go on.
it's £18,000 for the whole course, so the 2.5 years if you're self-funding, and if you are eligible for an apprenticeship, that contributes 11,000 of that 18,000.
Brilliant. What a shame. We have actually run out of time. There's a load of questions here. You do have the information to contact us all to carry on that question and answer. We want to hear from you. So please follow those email addresses and come back to us with more questions that you have. So I just want to thank Rosina Watson. Thank you very much for joining me on the sofa. Kenisha, thank you very much indeed for the full explanation of the modules. Neil, thank you. Sorry we didn't get to hear more from you. And Kerry, likewise, in terms of our apprenticeship. So thank you very much indeed, team. This is the team that you're going to be interacting with, hopefully, if you come onto the course, which we want to see you. So thank you. We've run out of time. Studio production today has been by Chris Ripley, David Metcalf, and Robin Hackett. My name is Toby Thompson. Thank you for watching.